Because I run a job board, I talk to applicants almost every day. And many of the people I meet make the same mistake. They have no clear job search goals. So they apply everywhere, every day, all day long. You might think it's smart to send lots of applications. After all, it's a numbers game, right? It's not. The more you narrow your search, the easier everything gets, and the happier you'll be in your next job. Stop chasing every lead. Instead, focus on what you really want. Now, figuring out your goals can be hard, but we have a MaxList resource that can help. Finding focus in your job search. Go to maxlist.org/focus. Our free step-by-step MaxList guide will help you create your own job search goals. Get your copy today. Visit maxlist.org/focus. Again, that's maxlist.org/focus. This is Find Your Dream Job, the podcast that helps you get hired, have the career you want, and make a difference in life. I'm your host, Mac Pritchard. I'm also the founder of MaxList. It's a job board in the Pacific Northwest that helps you find a fulfilling career. Every Wednesday, I talk to a different expert about the tools you need to get the work you want. It's important to deal with disappointment when you look for work, but resilience also matters after your job search ends. Beth Benatti Kennedy is here to talk about how growing your resilience helps your career. She's a leadership coach, a resilience training expert, and a speaker with more than 20 years of experience. Beth is also the author of Career Recharge: 5 Strategies to Boost Resilience and Beat Burnout. She joins us from Beverly, Massachusetts. Well, let's jump right into it. Beth, what is resilience exactly?
So resilience, I know we've heard a lot about this since the pandemic, and my definition is pretty clear. It's that resilience is the ability to manage stress proactively, moving forward and bouncing back from challenges. But what it's not about having a tough exterior and getting through everything and pushing and sharing stress with others. And that's unfortunately what a lot of people think resilience is.
What difference does resilience make in your career? Most of us will probably spend 40 plus years in the workplace. How can resilience shape our careers?
So I think what's so important when we think about resilience, we have to realize that it's a competency. So it's like confidence. It's coming across with focus. And whether you are looking for a job, whether you're in a job, being resilient is a business competency. And really interesting, I just saw this morning the World Economic Forum has made resilience be one of the top 5 skills that all of us need in our jobs. So it is number 5, resilience and agility.
Beth, in your experience, do some people think of resilience as something you're either born with or not born with, or do they think of it as a skill?
My experience is that things have changed now and people are realizing that resilience is a skill that we can develop. And that's what's so exciting. It's like a muscle. And it's something I've seen over my years of coaching that people really can enhance their resilience. And we will be getting into a little bit more about how we can do that.
Why does resilience matter when you look for work? I know we're talking about careers, but when you're doing a job search, what difference can having resilience or increasing your resilience make in getting your next job?
Yeah, what I've seen is that resilience can make such a difference because there is so much stress that we don't even expect when we're going for a job search. And what it does is, I see it's almost like having a bank account. The more we invest in our resilience, the more strength and energy we have for our job search. And then this leads to us landing, we know how important those first 90 days are. When we're resilient, we have our confidence, we have our energy, and we're able to move forward. There is so much uncertainty these days, even when you get that dream job. But when you're resilient, you're able to, it's almost like ride the roller coaster, the ups, the downs, and avoid going down kind of that doom of the burnout escalator.
What happens to job seekers who aren't resilient?
What I have learned from some of my clients that have come to me saying, I need to work on my resilience, is they feel like they get too emotional. They're not focused. They can't handle some of the daily challenges that are just part of every job. We have to realize there's eustress, which is good stress. There's distress, which is bad stress. And every day our life is going to be filled with both of them.
We're talking today about resilience, but you've also written a lot about burnout, Beth. Is burnout the opposite of resilience, or is it something that happens when you don't have resilience?
So burnout is so interesting because there's 5 stages of burnout. And the first stage, believe it or not, happens when we're really passionate about our career. And it's when we don't have clear boundaries. But then what tends to happen is we work harder and harder. Stress starts to get into our life. It starts to get into our job. And then we go down that burnout escalator of those other stages. So it's not necessarily the opposite of resilience, but the key to preventing burnout is resilience. And that's why I developed the Benatti resiliency model, which are 5 key strategies to focus on to be resilient, but also to prevent burnout.
Well, let's talk about that motto and those 5 strategies. I know the first one is to pay attention to well-being. What do you mean by well-being, Beth? And how does it help you to be resilient in your job search and your career?
Most of us think about well-being as just as exercise, but I think about it very holistically. It's about physical, emotional, and spiritual health. And we really have to pay attention to our brain because there is so much stress these days. Our brain is producing a lot of cortisol. So we need to think about little tiny habits and activities we can do throughout our day to produce those really good brain chemicals. So we know how important it is to think about gratitude. We know how important it is to take little micro breaks, whether it just be a 2-2-2 breathing, inhale, hold, exhale. Maybe it's just going out into nature and looking at the beautiful awe that we see. So well-being is what I like to think about it like a puzzle. It's a really big piece of the puzzle to being resilient.
You mentioned micro breaks, going out into nature, keeping track of gratitude. What are other steps that you can take to improve well-being?
A really important step is not focusing on things we have no control over. And Stephen Covey is famous for this concept of, he calls it the center of control. What are the things we have no control over, and what are the things we can make a difference? And I think a lot of that even has to go with applying for jobs. And, sometimes we can work as hard as we can to get that interview, and we may not get that job. So there are things that we have control over and things we don't have control over. And that's a huge piece of well-being.
How do you help your clients determine what they can control and can't control, particularly when they're doing a job search?
So one of the things I have my clients do is a list of satisfiers and a list of dissatisfiers. So what are those things that really recharge them? What are the things that, what are their strengths? What are their values? I make sure the clients I coach really have that clear self-awareness, which is the second area of the model. But also there are some things that we all know, politics, sometimes there is somebody's already been determined to have the position. So there are some of these unique positions that we can't quite get to.
Are there any other steps that you would recommend to improve well-being, Beth?
Absolutely. One of the things, some specific strategies that my clients have used is daily planning. So spending that first 5 minutes of every day, what are the big rocks that I want to accomplish? What are the little rocks that I want to accomplish? And then to keep thinking about well-being, as I mentioned in the beginning, like making an investment. So even if you just put a little bit of money into the bank, you're going to see the return. So what are the small little wins you can have throughout the day? And to realize it can become contagious. So if you are going into the office, it's a great idea to say, who wants to take a 10-minute walk at lunch? Even things like, we know how important is getting enough rest and making sure, am I spending too much time on technology? What are my technology boundaries? All of these, they seem like little strategies, but they all add to our well-being.
Terrific. We're going to pause right now and take a break. Stay with us. When we come back, Beth Benatti Kennedy will continue to share her advice on how growing your resilience helps your career. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. One of the best habits I've formed is keeping a gratitude journal. Every night, I write down 3 things for which I'm grateful. And what stands out, besides my good fortune, is the difference so many people have made in my life. This time of year is all about gratitude and giving thanks to others. But besides the people who help us, there's another person we don't thank enough, ourselves. We're often our own worst critics, and we may forget that we're trying to do our best. Therapy can help you learn skills that empower you to be the best version of yourself. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched to a licensed therapist. Let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/dreamjobpod today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/dreamjobpod. Do you ever find yourself holding back on travel plans because you're afraid of the language gap? Well, no need to mind the gap if you have Babbel. Designed by real people having real conversations, Babbel gets you talking. Its tips and tools are grounded in the real-life stuff you'll actually need. So you'll be ready to talk wherever you go. I'm traveling to Germany later this year, and I'm using Babbel to learn basic German so I can order food, ask for directions, and speak to someone in a bar. You can do this too. Here's a special, limited time deal for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription. But only our listeners at babbel.com/dreamjob. Rules and restrictions may apply. We're back in the Max List studio. I'm talking with Beth Benatti Kennedy. She's a leadership coach, a resiliency training expert, and a speaker with more than 20 years of experience. Beth is also the author of Career Recharge, 5 Strategies to Boost Resilience and Beat Burnout. And she joins us from Beverly, Massachusetts. Well, Beth, before the break, we were talking about how growing resilience can help your career. And you've got the Benatti model that lays out 5 strategies for increasing your resilience. We talked about the first one, and we'll go to number 2 on your list, which is to pay attention to self-awareness. Why is this important to do, Beth?
So self-awareness to me has 3 key areas. So the first one is knowing our purpose, and it's our why. Why do we get up in the morning? And for everyone, it's different. Sometimes it's personal, family, career, but kind of just diving in deep to that question. And then the second area of self-awareness is having a growth mindset. We know how important that is for resilience to think about, are we open to learning? Are we open to change? Are we adaptable? And then the third area, a lot of people don't think about with resilience, but I think it's crucial. And that is understanding your personality type. And what do I mean by that? I mean, how are you showing up? And do you flex so that you can get along with all different types of people? Because that's really where career success and career resilience flourish.
Those are 3 important but big steps. How do you help people do those things? Get self-aware, pay attention to the growth mindset, and your third step. How do you help people do that?
So my favorite activity, I'm going to share the one I do with purpose. My favorite activity is called the Purpose Mind Map. And the first step is you can take any assessment you want. There's a lot of them out there on values. I would recommend, if you want a free one, the VIA, which a lot of people are familiar with. And in that Purpose Mind Map, you put your top 7 values inside the circle. And then the outside of the purpose mind map are all those other things that are important to you in your life. So when you think about resilience, we also think about recharge. So a big part of that activity is making sure all my clients have recharge activities, because it's great to love your job, but it's also important to love your life. So I would say in that book, that activity is in my first book, but it's something that's all of us can take the values assessment. They're available. I even think there's a few podcasts that talk about that in your Find Your Dream Job podcasts.
And how does doing focusing on these three things help you improve your resilience? Why do they make such a big difference?
So one of the really important things about self-awareness is if we don't know ourselves and know where we want to go, then we often just flounder. So we also get affected by stress more easily because we don't understand our personality type. What might motivate me might stress you out. So by spending time on that third area of personality type, we learn our stress triggers. And once we learn our stress triggers, then we can have what I call our resilience toolbox. And that's a huge piece of resilience, is realizing that all of us are going to handle stress differently, and knowing, wow, today I worked a 10-hour day. That's too much for me. I need to make sure I get some exercise in and I get to bed early. So it's really about self-awareness is creating a toolbox that's customized for you that helps you recharge and be your best.
The third of your 5 strategies for growing resilience to help your career is to focus on your brand. How does branding help you become more resilient?
So this is one of my favorites because we don't hear about brand a lot when we talk about resilience. And what I want you to think about, your brand is like your thumbprint. It's different for everyone. And we need to really be clear on what are our strengths, what are our skills, and how do we want to stand out and make the impact in our organization. So if we don't know our brand, we may just be going for every job, and then it's almost like being on a sailboat and the wind is blowing you everywhere and you don't know where you're going. But if you have a brand and you know those attributes you're really good at, it's also going to help you throughout your career focus on organizations that give you the best fit. It will help you in teams be able to be more productive because you know what you're good at and you share it with others. So all that is part of brand, making an impact. And the piece that I have to mention is thinking about your reputation. When you leave at the end of the day, what do people think about you? It's so important to think about brand for resilience.
Your fourth strategy for growing resilience is to build and maintain connections. What kind of connections do you have in mind here, Beth? And what's the best way to create these connections?
So we've heard a lot about, especially, not since the pandemic, but even before the pandemic, the research on how important connection is for energy, for recharge, for engagement. So one of my favorite exercises, I call it Who's in Your Boat? And right now, all of your listeners can think about who are the top 3 people that support you. And they can be professional, they can be personal. But what we know, and there's lots of research on this, is if we have people in our boat that we can talk to and that support us, it is going to move us forward in our career and make us more resilient.
How do you know if you have the right people in your boat? And if you don't, what should you do about it?
Well, one of the important things to think about is, do they give you energy? So one of the things I tell people to be careful of are what I call the toxic vampires. These are the people that just want your time, but they take and they take and they take. And we have to remember, connection is a dialogue. It's not just a monologue. So it should be a 2-way street. So pay attention and also realize that at the end of the day, how do you feel when you're with that person? If they recharge you, you keep them in your boat. And the other thing I want to highly recommend to everyone is having a connection plan. How do you stay in touch with people regularly? It could be a text message, it could be an email, or maybe it's a phone call twice a year. But we shouldn't just be reaching out to connections when we lose our job. We should be nurturing and cultivating relationships on a regular basis.
So you don't want any toxic vampires in your boat, but if you want to add new people, how do you find them and invite them on board?
I'll tell you one of the best ways my clients have found people and myself is professional organizations, but also volunteer work. So those are two different ways I've had clients meet great new friends on their boat from exercise classes. So it's one of these things I think we have to be open to it and really just pay attention to our body language and how do we feel. And remember, it's not a numbers game. You'd rather have a small group of people on your boat that care about you than all these followers that don't really care about you and nourish you.
The final of your 5 strategies for building resilience to grow your career is to practice innovation. What kind of innovation do you have in mind here exactly, Beth?
So 2 types of innovation, personal innovation and professional innovation. And when I think about innovation, I think about the idea of challenging ourselves and learning new things. So professional innovation in your career, what if, this year or the next 3 months or the next 6 months, how do you want to enhance your learning? But then your personal life, because we know for resilience, we have to have that balance of professional and personal fun. So what are you doing for your personal fun? And is there something new you want to add to your list? I just had a client that's taking salsa lessons. Maybe you want to take tennis lessons. Maybe you just want to even learn maybe how to, do something totally new like painting. So innovation is any way you challenge yourself professionally and personally. And the greatest thing about it is it provides incredible recharge that will make you more resilient in your career.
Well, it's been a great conversation. Now, tell us, Beth, what's next for you?
So lots of exciting things going on. My latest book is called Rethink Resilience, 99 Ways to Recharge Your Career and Life. And we have a webinar, we have live training, and we even have an overnight retreat. But the other thing I want to offer all the listeners is the opportunity to take my resilience benchmark, which takes less than 10 minutes, and it will assess you on these 5 areas of resilience. And it will also provide you with some specific strategies that we didn't even cover today for each area. So that will be provided to you as well. And then I just wanted to also highlight that I was honored to be able to do a TEDx talk at Northeastern. So check that out. It's on my website, and that is called Reset Career Resilience to Reverse Burnout.
Terrific. We'll be sure to include those links in the show notes and the website article and about your episode. And I know you also invite listeners to connect with you on LinkedIn. And when you do reach out to Beth, I hope you'll mention you heard her on Find Your Dream Job. Now, Beth, given all the great advice you've shared today, what's the one thing you want a listener to remember about how growing your resilience helps your career?
The one thing that I think is really important is to realize that asking for help is one of the most important factors of being resilient. So whether you are beginning a job search or deciding to job search or going for an interview, ask for help. Take a look at the different resources that are available out there. Reach out to friends, reach out to coaches, reach out to people you trust. Don't try to find your dream job by yourself or be resilient by yourself. Ask for help. It's really worth it.
Next week, our guest will be Brittany Brazel. She's the Human Resources Manager at Our Children's Trust. It's a nonprofit public interest law firm that serves youth from diverse backgrounds. Don't let the naysayers fool you. Cover letters are not dead, and a good one can make all the difference in your next application. Join us next Wednesday when Brittany Brazel and I talk about how to write a knockout cover letter. Until next time, thanks for letting us help you find your dream job. This show is produced by Max List. Susan Thornton Hoff schedules our guests and writes our newsletter. Lisa Kislenberry Anderson manages our social media. Our sound engineer and editor is Matt Fiorillo. Dawn Moe creates our transcripts, and our music is by Freddie Trujillo. This is Mac Pritchard. See you next week. Have you ever been asked this in a job interview? Tell me about a time when you didn't agree with your boss. What would you say? This is what's called a behavioral interview question, and it's a common tactic. Employers use this kind of question to explore your fit for a job based on your past experience. It can be an easy question to answer if you have the right strategy. I show you how to answer these gotcha questions in our free Max List guide, 100 Behavioral Interview Questions You Need to Know. To get your copy, visit maxlist.org/questions. You'll also learn 4 simple steps for answering any behavioral interview question. Again, that's maxlist.org/questions. You can count on getting these questions in your next interview. Why not get the answers before you walk into the interview room? Go to maxlist.org/questions.